This week, who can stop the Penrith Panthers? They are looking very impressive. Some big injuries that'll really test a few teams. What else do you see, Steve?
Mate, we also talk about the struggling Bulldogs attack and what they need to do to spark that. Some major shifts in Gagan's power rankings for the week, which is an interesting chat, and a little bit of SuperCoach news there at the end for us.
Absolutely. So you've put the line through the Dogs, so the Dogs fans, let that be known. Make sure you tune in for that piece. And an early Wooden Spoon Grand Final preview with the Dragons versus Titans, we'll dive into that as well. I'm Ian Hawkins, and this is Sport is Life. The purpose of sport, as I see it, is to see your vision become a reality. Find your voice, create strong connections, and learn to trust your body. How are you, Steve?
Yeah, g'day, Hawk. Good to see you, mate. We got through round 3, 7 cracking games of footy, and one that we don't really need to speak about, mate.
Well, we said that last week. One of us will be quite happy, and the other one maybe not so much.
Yeah, how you been, buddy?
Yeah, really good.
You got out of the footy yesterday?
I did get out of the footy. I'm not across all the games because I was away at the weekend, but we drove straight out there on the way home from the mountains. So, yeah, I've, like I said to you before we hit record, I've watched that one twice, so we'll have plenty to unpack in that one.
Can't wait to get to it, mate.
Yeah, I bet. There were some good things for the Dragons. Like, we already know where their deficiencies are, so we'll come back to that. Dogs Raiders. Fuck, it's a long way back to Thursday night, isn't it?
It is. We're almost closer to this week, mate. But yeah, there's a few key things to come out of that for me. You know, the Bulldogs, no doubt, confirmed that they're probably the second best defensive team in the comp behind Penrith. They were once again very impressive. Some unbelievable defensive efforts from the fullback, who, you know, we questioned his attacking ability and certainly confirmed his effort. Little bit for the Dogs, though, on their attack. I think for 2 weeks in a row now, they obviously had the bye in the middle. But the Raiders and the Dragons, both teams had someone in the bin, and they haven't really lit up the field with the ball. So, I'm going to need to start to see a little bit more from the Bulldogs. To only score 14 against Canberra, admittedly wet, and Canberra obviously a pretty decent side, but everything went their way again for the second week in a row for the Doggies. And yeah, if they're going to beat the big guns, they're going to need to do something with the ball, mate. I don't know whether you saw it any different than that, but certainly very impressive again with defence. Defence and effort can't knock the Bulldogs. But particularly that spark and attack, mate.
Yeah, no, particularly towards the end of the match when the Raiders just had chance after chance and they just kept repelling them. It was pretty impressive. Yeah. It was a great fight back by the Raiders, but as you said, the Dogs should have put the game away well and truly by then. And there are times where they just... Not clueless, but it's the word you use, spark. That's what it was. There is still the potential for that to all click, and I think the pressure's still going to come for Galvin. Is he a 7? Is he this? Is he that? I just think that it takes time to actually get these combinations going. There's very few players who can come in and just take over and make it happen. So, I mean, if we even look at the Panthers last year when they lost probably the most influential players from their era, it did take them a good 5-6 months before they click, and now look at them.
Yeah, so you certainly make a good point, mate. I just see 15 points against the Dragons. You've seen what's happened to the Dragons the last 2 weeks. They've had a score run up against them, and they had someone in the bin. 14 points against the Raiders, and they had a sin bin with Papali. So I just think, you know, we've called it a few times with Burton not being a 6. I think their best 6 is playing halfback, and they're probably their best 7. You know, probably Sean O'Sullivan at the moment. He's hovering between 19th man and reserve grade. I didn't see the game, but apparently had a very solid game in reserve grade over the weekend. So for mine, I think they've just got to bite the bullet and move either him or Woods, if he's back from injury, into first grade, mate. I think they've got to get their head around the fact that Galvin's their best 6. Burton just is not creating opportunities. You know, even if the points weren't flowing, you'd like to see some opportunities be created. and it's just not happening for the Bulldogs. So, look, they're going to defend themselves to plenty of wins this season. They're obviously a top 8 side with their defensive line, but if they're going to take that next step, it needs to come with the ball, mate, for mine.
I'm going to say the opposite. I think they need to persist. I think there's too much class in that side for it not to click at some point. And the best team in the comp doesn't have to score massive amounts of points. They have to be able to defend as well as they do. And there's like a long history of teams that defend their way to premierships, and they certainly have the ability to do that. It's just whether they can sustain it, because I come back to what happened at the back end of last year when they just ran into a wall and they just weren't making yardage. That happened again at the back end of that game on Thursday night. The Raiders had them pinned and they just could not get out. And at some point that's going to come back to bite them. Or maybe it doesn't, and maybe they can keep pressing on. But last year as the guide is that eventually that defensive system took its toll and they didn't have enough scores on the board to win some of those games. So watch this space.
Definitely, mate.
Now, we talked about the black wall the last couple of weeks. Seriously. I've had a few judges over the weekend say, if possible, Luke Keary being one who would know a thing or two about them, he said, if possible, that's the best that I've seen them in this 6-year era. And that's a big statement, but geez, they were good, weren't they?
Yeah, they've just gone on this campaign to start the season. You know, we all had a bit of a dip at the start of the last year. They were tired. You could see how they come out of the gates. We spoke in the preseason about how tough a draw they've started with and they've got. But super impressive. They've got the steely look in their eyes. They've got the chip on the shoulder. To hold Brisbane, an attacking juggernaut to 0, the Sharks to 6, when we know while the Sharks aren't, they're at their best at the moment, they've got some absolute electric footballers. And then the Roosters to 4. Like, this is unheard of. We talked about how good the Bulldogs defensive, but Penrith are just absolutely ruthless at the moment. I heard only just this afternoon 11 of the 17 ran for over 100 metres. So not only are we dominating in defence, but with the ball, they're just absolutely ruthless at the moment. So to go Broncos, Sharks, Roosters, and do the number on them and what they've done, wow! I'm sure there'll be people out there, some of the listeners will come up with teams that have started better, but I can't think of any at the moment. They've just been another level.
Yeah, absolutely. Different eras in different forms of play. Teams have probably started better, like, the touch football days of late 90s, early 2000s. Just can't compare it, like in more recent history. Yeah, no, I don't remember a team. The only thing that sort of pops to mind is the first half of the Bulldogs when they were defending their premiership. It might have even been against the Dragons, where Sonny Bill just ran riot, and then SBW had an injury halfway through that, and the Dogs sort of hit their peak first half of the first game. But I can't remember being as excited about a team.
No,
no,
they look super impressive. Yeah, they look super impressive, mate, through the 3 harder games. And now for the next few weeks, for Penrith, it starts to ease off from what you'd expect it ease off. Obviously, the draw will put up a couple of anomalies, but super impressive. Week 3 only, but wow. It'll take, what it looks like now, it'll take serious injuries, not just 1 or 2 of them. It'll take serious injuries, because 2-0 on the wing at the moment looks like he's destructive best. Cleary and Yo just controlling the ball. It's almost like Smith and Cronk at their peak. Their back 3, old Milky Jenkins, unstoppable at the moment. His yardage. So everyone looks fresh, everyone looks fit, and they just look dialed in to really make a statement around, well, up yours, we didn't win it last year, 26 is ours. So can't wait to see how this story plays out.
100%. And the level of deception that Cleary's added to his game, which you didn't think was possible. Like, he's like some of those no-look passes, like the whole body shift while he's looking another way and then playing another way. He did one which I don't think was picked up, I don't know if on Channel 9, but on Fox Sports. They didn't dwell on it, but probably because they didn't score. But there was a moment there that just gave me flashbacks to Joey's big game in the 205 Origin when Joey went one way and then cut back and hit Badiris on the chest, and he went under the posts untouched. It was like that when he hit Talangi, and Talangi hurdled a player and then just got stopped like inches from the line. And it was just like he was just in so much control, total control of that attack. And then my mind straight away goes to New South Wales and going, when are we going to see that level of dominance in a blue jersey? And maybe I actually have been thinking about it. The missus asked me, she said, why can't he do that? And the only thing I could think of is that he's always been the man at Penrith. He came through as a kid, and he's just always, they've given him time, and he's been able to jump into that role. Has he fully felt comfortable in that rep setup where he feels like he can just come in and dominate? Because for mine, if he was, he would, but that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, it'll be another storyline for this Origin, right? So Cleary started on fire. He's clearly the best player in the comp right now. It'll be a huge storyline going to Origin this year. To your point, whether the NRL is a little bit more structured than Origin. Origin's a lot of effort, repeat effort, see what's in front of you. Whether that's a little bit to it, but look, regardless of what Cleary does in the rep football moving forward, he's no doubt going to go down as one of the greatest NRL players that we've seen, because what he's already achieved, let alone what's coming, he's still got many years ahead of him if he plays out his full career uninjured. He'll be one of the greatest NRL players we've ever seen. But, yeah, to your point with the rep football, I hope for his sake he does start to get a little bit of success and a little bit of dominance in that area. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see, mate, on it. But, yeah, look, hats off to Penrith and the way they've started. Speechless.
I kind of feel robbed as a New South Wales fan. Like when we've got a player of that calibre, and he's been doing that for 6 years, and we haven't seen it enough in a blue jersey. Whereas you've only got to look at the Queensland players. They're sometimes inconsistent elsewhere. They always seem to perform. Oh, man. Anyway, we move on. Super impressive. It's going to take a good team to stop them. And you've got another question for me around the mindset, which we'll leave towards the end. But one of those teams that has been able to stop them is the Brisbane Broncos, and that is because they do have the ability to stay in games for long periods of time. They are clearly fit. Like all those people saying, Madge's methods aren't any good, can stick it up their ass, because one thing's for sure is they do not go away for the whole 80 minutes when they're on and ready to go. And what a comeback that was the other night.
Yeah, it was special, right? So that was Broncos last year, wasn't it? They just hung in and fought. Really, high quality from the Broncos, especially to your point at that back end. The last few weeks we've been a little bit critical on them. They haven't looked like they've been in the game. They look like they've been a step behind, etc. So whether that's, the Broncos will talk about them loading on their fitness. They obviously had a disrupted preseason with coming off the grand final win into a trip to England, etc. So whether it's just the Broncos start to settle into their rhythm, it'll be interesting to see the next couple of weeks, but very impressive. That being said, I wasn't real impressed with the way the Storm closed out the game. I thought Munster and Hughes especially were quite poor for their level. They're two of the best playmakers we've got in the comp. Their fifth tackle options weren't at the level they needed to be. I think Bellamy would have been pretty dirty on them. They both had fifth tackle kicks deep in Brisbane territory when they were on the attack trying to get that last try to win the game, that were atrocious. They were both well long on where they needed to be and gave the Broncos back easy ball and just released the pressure. So, someone at the Storm really needs to stand up as that closer out. You talk about, we're pretty critical on the Sharks being flat track bullies. The Storm still haven't won those big games. They've lost a number of grand finals now. When they come up against a team that really gives it to them, they haven't got that player. So for their sake, I hope they can get a Hughes or a Grant or a Munster to really stand up and take control. You put Cooper Cronk in that side, I don't think the Broncos come over the top of them. I think he controls the game, and if they do come over the top of them, they had enough ball in that last 5 to 10 minutes down in that field possession that they probably come up with a try. So, yeah, I think there's something to look at for the Storm there.
Yeah, and as good as Harry Grant is when things are going good, that's you could say the same thing of Cam Smith, because we talked about it, the success that they've had. You got to look at the grand final. They got beaten 40 block when he wasn't there. It's control, it's decision making, and yeah, they still can go missing at times. So it did. I don't know about you. I was sitting there with a young fella in the first half, and he goes, I just feel like the Broncos are going to come back. And when I thought about it, I'm like, you might have a point there, because it really felt like the Storm should have put away in the first half.
Yeah. Yeah, you're 100%. It was almost like the Storm were just going through the motions. And when it was time just to close it out or just be that little bit ruthless, where they are against the weaker teams, they've put two teams away pretty convincingly leading into that. They just weren't there with what was needed to tie it out. So, look, hats off to Brisbane. They earned it. They deserved the win. To go down there to Melbourne and win early in the season is almost impossible. To do it when you're behind is unheard of. So good on the Broncos for doing that. They've got a massive local derby up here next weekend. So if they can get that one, it feels like they've got a bit of momentum going all of a sudden, and you forget about the first two rounds.
Absolutely. Will you get out to that one on the weekend, mate?
No, I'm going to miss that one. I'm making the move, mate. I'm going from the Gold Coast to Brizzy, so I've got boxes everywhere. We've got one last weekend of craziness before hopefully I can get to a couple of games of footy.
Yeah, nice. I was just thinking about maybe we need to find a decent level halfback to come on and talk about this, because it's like what happens in those moments when it doesn't work. The only thing I can equate it to, coming from a football, as in soccer coaching perspective, is the Matildas on Saturday night. They played really well, even though they got beat. But there was a couple of players there you could tell had got too focused on the outcome, and they missed a couple of chances where you could tell they were thinking about the goal instead of process. There was one in particular, Caitlin Ford. As soon as she hit it, she ran away like strikers do after they feel like they've scored, but it was almost like she's already thinking she was going to score. And that's the only I can think of, is in those moments, are they getting too focused on the try instead of just getting back to, okay, what is the process we go through here? What is the system? Where do we need to be? Again, I can't answer all that, but that's the only I can think of guys of that level not being able to execute when they've done it at the absolute highest level consistently. What happens in those moments?
Yeah, well, that's a good shout, mate. I mean, you hear Smith and Cronk, even the way they commentate now, it's all about that process. And from the stories they've told over their origin dominance that just hang in there. We'll get there. Keep grinding. Keep in the contest. Keep with the plan. So yeah, look, potentially, mate, that was what happened. It's certainly not nothing that the Storm have got the wheels have fallen off the cart. But you just look back, as I said, a few grand finals, a few of those bigger games. When it's time for someone to grab the game by the scruff, they just haven't quite come up. So, another storyline to play out over the next couple of months, because there's no doubt the Storm will be there at the end. It'll just whether they're good enough to get over the line, mate.
Absolutely. Now, this next game, I've only read reports and seen highlights. I was paying attention to it because it was my knockout team, and I was looking at the scores and just seeing some of the commentary. It sounds like we talked about the Knights hadn't really played anyone of any note, and it sounds like they were missing a few handy players in Ponga, Brown and Sharp, but you mentioned there in the notes is that they defensively they really struggled when there was sustained pressure put upon them. Is that about how you saw it?
Yeah, I did, mate. The Warriors were just too dominant through the middle. It's as simple as that. Barnett come back first game for quite a while now. He's obviously was out for huge chunks of last year, and they're just a really dominant, big outside backs as well. Gets the set starting. Then those middle forwards come through, and they were just too good for Newcastle. Is the bottom line. Would have loved to have seen. You talk about the big three from Newcastle. They're all attacking weapons, so I would have liked to have thought that their attack from Newcastle would have been a little bit better with them three. How they're going to add to their defence outside of having confidence in each other would obviously yet to be seen. But I think Newcastle, if they're going to match it with some of these teams, they're a little bit skinny in the forwards. When you talk about that pack New Zealand have got, it just keeps getting better and better each week. These young fellas that we've seen come through that have got anywhere from that 30 to 70 NRL games now, they're really showing their wares. And then a couple of really experienced front rowers. You probably match them up with two of the best in the comp. So, look, Newcastle was certainly not embarrassed by any stretch, especially with those players out. Looks like they're going to be without them for a while now. So they're going to have to find a way to try and jag a few wins. So certainly not embarrassed, mate. But yeah, the Warriors just look like they got that little bit of mongrel about them, and then that little bit of class. Tanner Boyd has been probably the breakout player of the season, which is unusual. He's played a few years of NRL now, but the New Zealand system seems to suit him a lot better than the Titans. Little wonder when you're playing behind a massive forward pack going forward. The Titans aren't renowned for tough forwards going forward. Poor old Tino's basically been on his own for the last 3 or 4 years. So it just goes to show you what a forward pack on the front foot can do for a young half. So, there's talk of Metcalf coming back and playing 6. That's how good Boyd's been. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to unfold. But that forward pack's going to be very, very hard to beat moving forward, mate.
It is. Now, it's already starting to show in the table, and just from the performances, a really clear distinct from almost like a bottom pile, that middle logjam we talked about, and then the top 3. Really, it's only the 3 that are really standouts, and I think it just shows there that Newcastle are probably on the fringe of that bottom sort of 4 or 5 teams and that logjam, and without their best players there, they very much fall into that bottom 5, and it just shows the gulf there. Maybe again, it shows that the Knights aren't far away, given like they didn't go away as outclassed as they were. They certainly weren't blown off the park. They had a dig, but we're seeing that. And one of those teams that, like after week 1, I'm like, I've got the Sharks as 10th. I might have got that wrong, but the way they played on Saturday, it was like, oh mate, well, they're going to have a long year. It's what we talked about in the preview. It's that staleness of the same team. We thought if they can get that formula they had at the back end of last year with the forwards rolling over the top and they're Brayley playing off the back of that, then they'll have some joy. But, mate, the Dolphins finally come good, but the Sharks, what is going on there?
Yeah, I mean, they've built their reputation on being a little bit hard-nosed in defence, working hard for each other out of the back end with their back 3. But it was like the Sharks turned up at Caltex Oval, met each other in the car park for the first time, put their jerseys on and ran out. They were nothing
and they were flat, flat.
They were nothing like the Sharks that we're used to, especially at home. Traditionally, the Sharks at home, the Bermuda Triangle, the teams go missing in there, and that was almost embarrassing. Right, hats off to the Dolphins. They had a tough loss the week before. They had a tough game the week before. Yeah, they scraped home against the Titans, but they showed a little bit of class. So their attacking form with the Dolphins is where it's at. So we picked the Dolphins pretty well at the moment. If they can get some defensive steel about them through that middle, they're going to be up there, and they're going to make their semis for mine. But look, the Sharks, again, similar story. I don't think the wheels have fallen off, but the last 2 weeks haven't been real impressive. So it's a really interesting game they've got coming up. We'll get to shortly against the Raiders, 2 teams that have had a couple of losses that it's a big round 4 game for them. So, look, hats off to the Dolphins. The Sharks, just a little bit of a concern for me. And to your point, maybe it's a little bit of staleness with the squad. I think this squad's it. This year's it for the squad. I think there'll be a major overhaul over the next sort of 18 months for the Sharks, which will be interesting to see how they react to that. But certainly at the moment, they haven't been impressive these last 2 weeks, Hawk.
No, and it looks like this window may close with a whimper, unfortunately, for Sharks fans. Souths versus the Tigers. For the life of me, I don't know how Tigers didn't win this game. Like you've got there in the notes, just lack that quality when it mattered. You go.
Yeah, well, you're right, mate. That's what happened. Those little key moments in the game that were going to decide it, the Rabbitohs just come up with that little bit extra. Just whether it's a little bit of class or not, or whether it's probably even more a little bit of game experience. The Tigers haven't
Maturity.
been. Sure, they've got the Penrith boys in the side, etc., but they haven't themselves been in those situations as regularly as the Sharks, as regularly as the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs are experienced football team. They've played a lot of rep football across the park. They've played a lot of NRL. The Tigers weren't far off, but just when it mattered, they weren't there. Obviously, two major injuries that we're still getting some information on with both their halves, Dewey and Jerome Luluai going down, so that's going to have a huge huge impact. They've got a couple of really good young halves coming through. Whether they push Appy into the halves and bring the young hooker through or not, their make-up when it gets announced tomorrow, team list Tuesday, will be really interesting to see. Really looking forward to hopefully a couple of those young fellas with big reputations getting a go. But look, South, at the end of the day, South just did enough to get over the line. They weren't spectacular. I still think they're a step or two away from the top 3 or 4 teams, but a win's a win.
Absolutely. It says Dewey's been cleared of any serious injury, but that usually means if it's hamstring, it's probably a couple of weeks. I'm hoping 2 weeks, so he misses Easter Monday against the Eels. But Luai is definitely going to be out for about 4 weeks. I think it's MCL. So I'm with you. Let's see if the young fellas can step up. It may even put Appy in at halfback, but they've got Jock Madden back, don't they, this year?
Yeah, they've got a bit of depth in them, and as I said, a few young guys. So it'll be interesting to see the team list. They're going to find it hard, fully strength against the Warriors over there. But at the end of the day, it'll give a few other guys an opportunity in first grade to see what they've got.
Absolutely. Just quickly finishing up on the Tigers. Royce Hunt, he's stripped a bit of weight. He looks really good. Alex Twal, an offload. He actually had a few, but the guy really impressed me, Tristan Hope. He was the young fella that debuted last year as a 26-year-old. He looked like something was going to happen every time he get the ball.
Yeah. Don't you like watching those sort of players? There, he's worked hard to get to the NRL. He is a late, developer. Finally got his opportunity, and every time he's there, the crowd just hold their breath a little bit. So, and to my point around the Tigers, they got one of the better crops coming through, so it'll be a transition for Benzie. Make sure that they can't all come at once. Obviously, Macassini, very, very hard task both weeks he's had, but held his own, and he's going to have a lot of good football in front of him. So they've got some good young footballers coming through. It'll just be might be a little bit too much for him this weekend, but weren't embarrassed against South, mate, by any stretch. No.
And South's big players did stand up. Jack Whiten was unbelievable defensively, as you'd expect, and Latrell at times looked like he was toying with them. He still seems to have some errors, just when he seems to have the game by a scruff of his neck. But the class shone through. Now, the game of the round, we watching there the first 3 sets from the Dragons. I'm there with my son and my nephew, and we're all like, oh, this could be a long day. You guys were so dominant. I cannot get over the size of your back 4. Back 5. Maybe not Val, but the rest of them are monsters.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's sad to say that our dominance lasted 3 sets, and then it went downhill from there. But you're right. I thought both coaches got it wrong. I actually I sent a message to the old man who's a mad dragon. I thought both coaches changed their locks before the game. So we went with Blake Laurie, and you guys went with Walker. And Walker's been so important for you guys coming on after 20 and really picking up the pace. And I thought they got it wrong. 20 minutes in, the Dragons were, to your point, running really strong. They had the penalty try, whether you agree with that or not, sort of kept power in the game. And then 20 minutes in, I saw Walker with his hands on his knees, and I thought, well, we got them, because this is when he should be coming on, when the Lorries and the Couchmans were starting to get a little bit tired, and he was buggered. But look, once again, Riles got it and got it right, because the Eels come over the top of them. At the end of the day, the Dragons can say, we had a bloke in the bin, we had the penalty try. It was 6-1 on the six agains at half time in favour of Para. But at the end of the day, they just made too many errors. Like between Val and Gutho, they made 6 or 7 errors between them. They weren't strong enough in defence. So, look, to your point, there was a lot of good signs about the Dragons, but Para were, hats off to them, they were just too good, mate. They held in and weathered the storm, and then Moses got involved and scored a couple of key tries.
I just wonder if you had a couple of quality halves playing with that pack, whether you've put the game to bed by half time, because there was a couple of times there where our defence was so feeble, you're cutting us apart. But then they just took some wrong options. Like Val flick passes one into touch when again we were just under the pump, and you had a chance to really extend the lead. The penalty try for mine, I can't for the life of me see how they get a penalty try. Like we were just like at the game just going, I mean, you take it because you want your team to do well. In saying that, you don't know what happens when at the Dragons at that point, when we were actually having a period of dominance. A try might have been a better thing for the Dragons, because if you'd gone to 12 then, when we were on a bit of a roll, like you said in that last 20, then it could have got a whole lot worse. But I don't know. I mean, it didn't. I don't think it mattered in the end, because in the end we ended up being the better side for the 80. But I think that's a stretch.
Yeah, everything you just said, spot on, mate. Look, at the end of the day, if it wasn't a penalty try, it was 10 in the bin. Yeah. Look, can't blame a tired forward for sticking his arm out. He shouldn't have done it, obviously, but look, penalty try or 10 in the bin, probably the same result. And to your point, it could have been worse, especially considering we got another 10 later in the game. So it was what it was, mate. I thought once again, Iongi at the back for Para had a really, really good game. He just keeps getting better and developing. Moses stood up when he needed to. I thought he was quiet for the first 20 or 30 minutes. But then just went bang when it mattered, and he got his opportunity. So, look, I think both ways. I think, look, the Dragons are in a bit of strife. They're not, we never picked them to make the 8, and Para certainly aren't going to win it. But there were positive signs for both sides, mate.
Yeah, agree. As long-suffering Para fans, we did the same as what I described about you guys. You could have put us away when it was 24-14 and we had all that possession down on your line and just took some dumb options. I don't know what's going on with Moses. For all the good that he did, he just made some really strange decisions. There was the one when we had an overlap and he turned it back inside to Katonga, who didn't go really near him, and he knocked it on. He threw another one to Paulo, like under immense pressure when he came back on the inside. Defensively, it was enormous. Like, he had to mark Sully in the second half, and he actually did a great job there. But just, I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing. He's easing into the year. You don't want to peak too soon. But he contrasts it to where Cleary's at the moment. I know who I'd rather have run on the show, just for that consistency. And again, it's just typical Para to not put a side away, and then you have a chance to come back, and we did defend long periods on our own line towards the back end of the second half. But, geez, you mustn't have been happy with some of those decisions when it looked for all money you're going to score out wide when we only had 12. So some poor decisions, and then doubled that down with poor execution. They went the wrong way a couple of times. Pezzito out on the left was really struggling with defence. He was.
So what do? Val keeps dropping the ball. Instead of going that way, we're coming back. And Sully did a number, and so they should have targeted Moses with Sully, try and wear down their primary playmaker. But I didn't think we went Pezzit. They scored a try early on that edge, and we saw what happened in round 1. The Storm did a number on Pezzit. Let's go there and go there and go there, but they didn't go there enough for me. So not only execution, but the actual plan itself. So look, the Dragons. You talk about some interesting games next week. Whoever loses next week is going to be winless and firmly on the bottom, and the press will be all over them. So there needs to be a bit of improvement both sides of the ball for the Drags.
There does, and as disappointing as it is, they've been in every game. And as a fan, when you know they're rebuilding, like, you can't ask for much more than that. They won't go away. I tell you, I don't know which of the Couchman brothers it was. The one who came in off the bench, the 17.
Ryan.
Like, when you're at the game, you get a different appreciation. He just looked dangerous every time he ran the ball or offloaded. Or again, you're probably watching them closer than me, but just in terms of what really stood out, it just felt like something was going to happen every time he had the ball.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of class. He's a huge work rate guy. Gets through a ton of tackles and hit-ups. But he's got that little bit of offload about him. So he's got something about him. He's going to be missing. I don't know what you saw live and whether you could get a look. I thought the tackle on poor old Hopgood wasn't good. But I thought the two men on top didn't help the situation. So while it certainly deserved a bin, be interested to see absolute heartbreak for Hopgood. He battled for Para all last year with that back injury. We've got a bit of an insider at the Eels, and he apparently was as fit as he's ever been, and really looking forward to the season. Had a suspension round 2, and then for this to happen to him, it's a tough pill to swallow. But yeah, Couchman has been good all 3 games. His work rate's phenomenal, and as I said, that offload's getting better. He lost, I don't know whether it was last year or the year before, but he lost a whole season to injury, just when front rowers need more game time. So as he gets a little bit older, as he keeps getting game time, he'll both Couchman brothers for that matter. But I think we're going to be missing both of them, one for a suspension and one for an injury for the next few weeks, which will put a bit of a dent up front for us. Yeah,
absolutely. Obviously, yes, like you said, bad tackle, but it wasn't the classic hip drop tackle. It didn't look bad, and if no one had been injured, you wouldn't have even given it a second look. But they do come down hard, particularly when the injury's bad. Yeah. So, yeah, you wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get if he gets 4 or 5 weeks. We've talked a lot about a lot of teams going for smaller, more mobile men. The Dragons were noticeably bigger physically. Kate's said to me, is it just the red jerseys or are they big? And I'm like, no, they're big boys. Like that Setu, who is a huge unit, Tuapolotu, Sully, and that's their backs. And then that forward pack. I mean, the Couchman boys are big, but they're mobile and they're quick. But I just wonder whether the size of your team in a game that seems to be getting quicker might be an issue as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, we saw how much weight break Blake Laurie and Luciano Leilua lost in the off-season. So there's an indication that they know they need to get a bit smaller. Kyle Matangi is a very mobile front rower coming next year. So I think they sort of are aware of it. But, we are one of the bigger sides in the comp. So if that's, to your point, we started really well, then back end of both halves is when we started to fatigue. So whether he starts to play Cook at 13 a little bit more and bring Little on at 9 and try and have that double, run through the middle, double runners through the middle strategy. It'd be interesting to see. But, look, right now they're a fair chunk away. While they've been in all 3 games, they're a fair chunk away from where they need to be, mate.
Absolutely. And for the Eels, they will need to defend significantly better or they will be absolutely massacred come Saturday against the Penny Panthers. Yeah. So hopefully the Panthers have an off night. Otherwise, I'm not holding much hope. But even with an off night, you still back them to win.
Yeah, it'll be hard. Like the Dragons have scored 20 against them, with respect. We know their halves aren't firing. So
you got 20. You got 20 against the Storm, though, mate.
Yeah, true. I don't know. Well, we'll see how their defence stacks up, but I would be concerned. Liam Martin up against Pezzett. I'm pretty confident they're both on the same side of the park. So if Martin's back on the field, that could be a very, very tough night for the young fella. But look, they've won the game. They'll be in there for a crack and see how they go on Thursday, mate.
Yeah. It wasn't just that one. Yeah, it wasn't just that one miss from Pezzett. You guys went through there a few times where he just made the wrong read. And my only hope, because he can clearly tackle, is that he's just learning the system and he'll get better. But he certainly looks a fair few weeks away from that being the case. So, concerning. There was something else I wanted to talk about with the Dragons, but if it comes back to me, we'll get there. Now, we've talked a lot about possession influencing games. The Cowboys just had all the ball for the start of this one, didn't they? I was listening to the radio and it would just sound like they just were camped on the Titans line.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, mate. And then they capitalised on it as well. So it was Drinkwater's best game of the season, just after I'd sold him in SuperCoach, which was tremendous news for my side. But yeah, look, first week back at home for the Cowboys, we've been pretty critical of the way they played. But first week back home, controlled the field position with their kicking game and their work through the middle, and then they showed a little bit of class. We know they've got two really good centres. They both were very good with the ball, and then Drinkwater did his thing. So he was just that little bit of class for them. That being said, the Titans had Campbell back. Campbell 2 tries, and again he's their class, right? So you saw how I think they would have got the Dolphins the week before if they had Campbell in the side. So look, not all lost for Titans. We know they're in a massive start again phase with coaching and recruitment. So they're obviously got a lot more losses ahead of them. But the Cowboys just showed a little bit more on Sunday night.
Yep. Was it Purdue with the head high against Campbell? He hit him flush with the wrist. He might be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I think the Tradition is going to have a busy couple of nights ahead, mate. So Teamless Tuesday will be an interesting one tomorrow night. But look, they were good. Look, they're not going to trouble the top sides, neither of those two teams. But if they can get a couple of wins for their home fans throughout the season, they'll be happy, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Just noticing there's a story coming through that Isaiah Yongi's been issued a breach notice by the NRL for that photo that popped up. Now, given photos of players sitting next to white powder only gets you 1 week, surely this one's just a smack on the wrist and he doesn't get anything.
Who knows with the NRL? Good to see that they were quick with the investigation process. That's quite a while ago. Unfortunately, they couldn't have got that done during the off-season when no one was writing newspaper headlines. But we'll see what happens with the NRL, mate, with that.
Non-event. All right, bit of preview. 2 teams battling. Like you would have thought this is just an easy one for the Roosters, but I don't know. It's really interesting.
Do we chalk up last week because the Panthers were really, really good, or are we saying the Roosters aren't quite there? I probably put a little bit of categories into both, but you know what our opinion of Manly is, mate. So I think the Roosters will be a little bit embarrassed, mate. I think especially the forwards. I think Penrith got on top of them, so I'd expect to see the Roosters come out pretty well firing, and let's see if Manly can hold on for a little while. Yeah,
surely they can't play that bad again at Brookie. And the other storyline's DCE back at Brookie for the first time playing in a different jersey. Be interesting to see how he's received. But yeah, I'm with you. I think the Roosters should come good, and I can't see them blowing them away just because they haven't been good enough, but they should win that easily.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. How do you see the Warriors and Tigers over in NZ going?
Mate, this could be an absolute pumping because without Luai and Dewey, it's a big adjustment, especially when you've been training that way the whole off season. And the Warriors' form is fairly enticing. So I don't know. I think the Tigers will go with them for a while because they did seem pretty well organised in defence. But we've seen the Warriors are just relentless, and if the Tigers aren't offering much going forward, it could be a long old night.
Yeah, agree, mate. The Tigers need to use this as a bit of a learning curve and a bit of experience for some young fellas, and just hang in there with the Warriors for as long as they can. But yeah, I think that one could be another bit of a I won't say a blowout, but I won't be surprised if it's 15, 20 points there with the Warriors. I think that back last 20 minutes of the game, especially, I think the Warriors will rack them up.
Yep. Now, this game 2 weeks ago would have been talking about it being a really interesting game because there were two teams that weren't really in form, but suddenly they've both clicked. Certainly not perfect, but there was plenty to like about both performances. This could be an absolute belter.
Yeah, and should be, mate. It'll be I'll be surprised if it's not a packed house Friday night at Suncorp. Dolphins, Broncos. I think the big one for the Broncos will be what they can do for 80 minutes. They haven't put 80 minutes together now, well, probably ever. Even when they're winning grand finals, they had their down times, right? So that'll be interesting. And then for the Dolphins, what they can do in defence. We've obviously seen. We know what they can do in attack. Herbie Farnsworth started the season how we finished it last year. Katoa just keeps getting better. That forward pack is really, we talked about the big Dragon pack. That Dolphin pack is a little bit smaller through the middle, really mobile. So if they can start getting their defence in order, they're going to be one hell of a side. And the Broncos, if they can put 80 minutes together, it'll be one hell of a side. So this will be a belter, mate, and one of the games of the weekend for me.
Absolutely. I was listening to, again, can't remember who it was, but they were talking about, might have been David Riccio, talking about Madge having a theory that the Broncos play much better when they are relaxed, given the nature of the personnel on the team. And you would have noticed in the box that at one point they panned to Madge and Trent Barrett enjoying a laugh when they were down on the scoreboard. It was a very un-Madge-like response. Yeah, right. But this is what he's trying to cultivate, and seems to be working.
You see, that's him evolving as a coach and as a leader, mate.
Well, yeah, and you think about how much pressure he would have been under, and how many people are coming for him, and yet he's gone completely counterintuitively to a whole other method. And if he's right and this works, it'll be really interesting to see just how good they can be, because there were times there where they looked back in terms of having that same standard that they were playing at the back end of last year. As you say, they need to show up for 80 minutes, but if coming with more of that relaxed attitude, certainly not lacking intent and intensity, like Tony Staggs was back ripping in. There was plenty of that intensity, but doing also with that more of that, not carefree, but fluency. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. They certainly, there was plenty to see that made them look like they were heading in the right direction. So if that continues to work, they might have a significant upside even on the back of last year.
Yeah, and it'll be a cracking game of footy to watch.
Well,
not so much like the next game, mate.
No,
a bit of a ball fest, I think.
I think so. More pain for the Knights, and maybe this is just what the Doggies need to get their attack to click, given that the Knights are down on personnel. But in saying that, again, it's not like the Warriors beat them by 60 or something. It was still only a 20-odd point win.
There could be, I don't know whether you've got the news come through yet, mate, but there could be a suspension for Trey Mooney. I think that'll really hurt the Knights if that comes through. Hopefully for him.
It looks like Sharp might be out again.
Yeah, so that's another one, right? So to lose Trey Mooney, he started the season really strongly. He hasn't been playing big minutes, that mid-40 minute mark. But, yeah, look, they're all effort. So to your point, if they can fight, I think the Bulldogs will have too much for them. Crichton seems to have that fullback centre role sort of going well in attack at the moment. I think they probably will have too much class for them. But, if the Knights can hang in and dig deep and fight, then bring it down into the gutter and really make it a scrappy game. I don't know whether it'll be one for the TV ratings, but you never know what might happen on the result, mate.
Your hatred of the Dogs is nearly as good as mine for the Eagles.
Yeah, I was quite frustrated when they won on the weekend, truth be told, mate. I didn't pick them, but I picked the Raiders. But what do you do, mate? So, yeah, look, hopefully, to your point, for the Bulldogs fans, they can get a little bit of rhythm in attack, can show a little bit, then probably not going to get much better chance to beat Newcastle, especially if Mooney's out. That's four of their best players. At Canterbury, day game. I don't know what the weather's like in Sydney, but that's probably going to be their best opportunity to start scoring some points compared to what they've faced in the first 3 rounds. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. Now this next game, one of the things that was noticeable, as much as the Eels tidied up their ruck, they still had lapses where the Dragons just went straight up the middle. Like I mentioned, the first set they went 60-odd metres, and there was a couple of sets throughout where they did that. Now, obviously, we're going up at a whole other level of class with the Panthers. My concern is they're just going to get in a roll and overpower us. The only thing I'm clinging to is that over the last 6 years, Paras seem to be able to match them at different times. Maybe not as much in the last couple of years, but we were talking about it on the way home from the game yesterday. It's like there was a season, might have been 21 or 22, where we started 0-4 and then beat the Panthers in round 5. So there's hope, but I'm clutching.
Yeah. Sorry, buddy, you're clutching one hell of a clutch there. Look, they're coming off a win. At the end of the day, while it's a Penrith home game, it'll be at CommBank, which I will be very surprised isn't a sellout. Hopefully it's a dry game of footy. We spoke earlier about Liam Martin. I'm not sure how far off he is from returning. I think he'd be a monster up against Bizet on that right edge for
that will be problematic.
Yeah, that'll be a big task for him. He's really going to need his back rower to tie in for him. But look, at the end of the day, Paras coming off a win. They're at home again. They're certainly going to have plenty of spectator support. So see how they go. But for mine, we mentioned it last week. I think you ride Penrith until they give you a reason not to. I think it'll be a tough afternoon for Parramatta, mate.
Yeah, well, Martin actually played last on the weekend. I don't know if he started, but I remember seeing one run, and I had that thought about next week going, oh, God, he's going to tear us apart.
Yeah, mate. If he played last week, he'll be playing. So, he'll he's pretty hard-nosed. He's one of the best line runners in the world. So it'll be a tough day for him, but, mate, they're in with a fighter's chance.
Absolutely. This next game, as good as... did you see anything from the Cowboys that makes you think they're a hope here?
No. Look, there was plenty to see for the Cowboys that I liked, but playing against the Titans are a little bit different than playing off a Storm, coming off a loss as well. You talk about a bit of a dented ego. I don't think Bellamy would have been real happy with what he saw. So I think Melbourne will be really on, and while the Cowboys shown signs of improvement, they're well away from the Storm, mate.
Isn't there some crazy stat about the Storm not losing 2 in a row for I don't know how many years it is, but it's a long time. So, I think the poor old Cowboys could be in for a world of pain there. Raiders Sharks. This is an interesting one because if we go off the last 2 weeks for the Sharks, you just think the Raiders are morals, but the Raiders have been good without being great, and they've only won the one of the 3. The logic says that the Raiders should be too good, but there's just too many unknowns in this game. I could go either way. Should be a good one, I reckon.
Yeah, you're right, mate. Both teams like to really control the yardage game. So obviously the Sharks back 3, couple of front rowers, that Raiders pack and those young backs. So we're going to control them. The ruck is going to be vital. Let's hope we don't have a referee who wants to continue to influence the game. Let's hope he just referees the game instead of controls it, because whoever controls the ruck and whoever wins that yardage battle is going to be the ones that win the game. Look, the Raiders, they're both 1 and 3. Correct me if I'm wrong, mate. 1 and 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, mate. But I think the Raiders' losses have been a little bit better. their young backs have been a little bit more polished. So I think they've probably got the edge, especially at home. But if the Sharks turn up and show what they can do, really get momentum through the middle and let those wingers loose down the other end, then I can see an upset there. Not that I've seen the market, but I'd assume Canberra favourites. But I probably think that yardage game from Raiders will just get them over the line, mate.
Should do. But it is 4 o'clock on a Sunday. The weather should be reasonable. It's not like it's 7:30 in the middle of winter, so it's not quite the same daunting task. Just hope both teams have a crack, because I think that could be a good way to spend a Sunday afternoon. This next one.
Oh, an absolute belter.
It is. And as you said, it'll be one team off the mark. Could you see a draw that goes the distance all the way to 90 minutes?
Mate, I'm a Dragons fan. I could see anything happening here. Genuinely. Who knows? Look, I will be absolutely ropeable and disappointed if the Dragons don't get the Titans, but there'd be plenty of Titans supporters out there thinking exactly the same thing for their team, right? So this could be anything, mate. Close your eyes and throw a dart at a board on this one. Both teams have showed glimpses throughout their different games. St George have shown some toughness. The Titans showed plenty of fight against the Dolphins, a really good attacking side. So, mate, your guess is as good as mine on this one, Hawk.
Well, like you've said there in the notes, mate, it'll come down to error rate, and whoever hangs onto the ball could just get this one. I still like the Dragons. I just think they're just offering too much consistency, and Gutho and Val cannot have games as bad as they did last weekend, even with the dislocated finger. Actually, on that at the ground, he actually held it up and it was on the big screen, and the whole crowd just went, "Oh!"
He didn't seem too fussed by it, so I don't know whether it pops out regularly or not. But mate, it's a 5:15 kickoff Queensland time. If I'm still watching it at 6 o'clock, that's good signs. But I can quite easily see myself turning this off at half time. But let's give the Dragons some hope, mate.
I might have it on in the background while I cook dinner, but I can't see myself giving it too much attention.
Fair enough.
All right, Gags' power rankings for this week.
Some interesting,
we had last week.
Movements.
Yeah, we had Storm at the top. We had Penrith, we expect them to be, Warriors, Newcastle, Tigers, and a couple of those teams have fallen off a cliff. So let us know, where are we up to this week, Steve?
Yeah, so a couple of interesting ones from Gags. He's moved Penrith up to the top spot, and after that performance against the Roosters, who people thought were a top 4 side, you can't argue with that. Warriors at number 2, again, been super impressive, both defence and attack. So I certainly won't argue with him then. This is where it gets a little bit interesting. So he's got the Dolphins at number 3. So they're a new addition to his power rankings. I don't know whether he's Queensland influence. He's a good Sydney boy, Gags, but he's been up here playing with the Devils for 5 or 6 years now. So that may be a little bit. Look, the Dolphins have been good. They're 2-1. Whether I probably agree they're the third, it'd be a bit of a stretch for me, but that's where he's got them. And after the win down in Melbourne, he's pushed the Broncos into 4th and the Storm down to 5. So he's obviously seen a few things with the Storm there that concern him a little bit, from 1 to 5. But that's how Jacob Gagan's got the power rankings for this week.
Yep, and last week I couldn't disagree. This week I have to disagree. It's one you get off the Storm bandwagon at your own peril. To me, they're still sitting at 3. Like, it's one game against a team that just suddenly clicked. I do like the fact that he's brought both the Dolphins and the Broncos into that top 5, because for mine there's no other teams that are standing out enough to get in there. There's a few other teams that have won 2 games, but none of them are kind of screaming that they're going to be doing massive amount of damage. So for me, he's got the right 5 teams. I'm just not sure about that order. I'd probably have the Storm at 3, Broncos at 4, and Dolphins at 5, because I think the Dolphins will climb that ladder, and I'm big on them, but a bit early for having them at 3 personally.
Yeah, mate, I probably see it similar to you. I think I wouldn't have the Storm ahead of Penrith and Warriors after their loss, and their Penrith and Warriors have just looked better for mine. But yeah, to drop them from 1 to 5, old Gags has been pretty brutal there. He hasn't mucked around. But look, I think this week's games, especially Broncos Dolphins, I think that'll tell us a lot about those two. Storm have got an easier game up in Townsville, but one they're expected to win, but one they need to win. So, early weeks, I probably see a lot of changes from week to week in the top 5, but that's how Jacob Gagan's got the power rankings for this week, mate.
Yep. One team that may be feeling a little bit left out of that 5 might be the Dogs, just because they're just going about their business with some great defence. You won't like that, no? Shaking his head. Yeah, but you know what's going to happen, mate? They're just going to keep flying under the radar, and suddenly we'll blink, and 3 months in, they'll be sitting at second or third because they just do enough to defend their way to victory.
Yeah, while I'll agree with you that they have been the best side both times, we could quite easily have seen them 0-2. And both games could have gone the other way.
True.
So, yeah, while you're right, and we talked about it earlier, they're going to defend their way to more than their fair share of games, regardless of how their attack develops. So I will imagine that we'll see the Dogs in there sooner rather than later if they keep doing what they're doing. But, I'm happy to have them missing the top 5 for another week, mate.
We all know what you think, mate. All right, listener questions. Would a full reserve grade competition help the standard of lower teams and give the fans more engagement? After turning up early on Sunday, which I don't usually do, and watching the Dragons absolutely pummel a very ordinary and lacklustre Cup side from Para, mate, I couldn't give 2 fucks what's happening in Cup.
Tell us what you really think, mate. That's all the Dragons have got to hold on to is our reserve grade for the second year in a row. The Dragons reserve grade team's going quite well. Look, I'm a little bit old school, mate. I'd love to see the reserve grade comp back in. It would absolutely devastate the Q Cup, which I'm a huge fan of. I love getting down to see the North Devils play, and it'd have a huge effect on that if the 4 Queensland teams, they're all starting to make moves up here around, putting their own reserve grade teams in. There's an under-21s comp that the 4 Queensland teams will run independently throughout the season. So it will have a big impact on the Q Cup. But that reserve grade...
Don't you think over time that'll actually strengthen your Q Cup? There might be an initial shock to the system, but the more opportunity we can give for players for that pathway, and the stronger we can make reserve grade, I think it lifts everyone up.
Yeah. At the moment, the teams get their share of the top 30 from 4 teams back spread throughout. Not all. There are clubs that don't get any top 30 players back, but it sort of spreads them out. Then, when you're playing with those guys on the weekend, you get a little bit more experience, seeing them at training, etc. But in the long run, no question, there's a fair bit needs to go into the Q Cup. They haven't got a pathway system they don't have a reserve grade as well. So there's a few things that have got to be fixed there. But yeah, I love the idea of being able to know, whether it's a reserve grade or whether it's back to that under 20 or even under 22 comp, so to speak. I think there needs to be something. I think coming to an NRL game, there's only one game. You're not really sure unless you're a real hard follower who you've got coming through the ranks. So yeah. I'd love to see that. And to the question, I'm not sure who sent it in, but those lower teams really do need that development. We've seen the top teams that are winning are the ones that develop their talent the best. So anything that they can get more game time at an elite level into other players, the better for mine.
Yep. I agree. I do remember fondly as a kid going and looking at the grades, like all through the grades and looking at the results, and you would know teams. Like every now and then someone posts a big league, the team page where it's got all 3 grades, and I'm looking at teams that I didn't support and I'm knowing players in all 3 grades because that's what we're used to, and we just not enough more depth, but there was 3 teams of men, not always young fellas, but some of those older guys sticking around. I'm not sure that'll ever happen because it's the professional era means that those guys need to get jobs, and it's a tough grind if you've got to earn money in this day and age. But I could see it definitely being beneficial in so many different ways. The next one, how do you see the 2 extra players on the bench going so far? I like it. I like it when I think when you're watching the opposition and you're hoping for the other team to get injuries so that their bench is ineffective. I just don't like that, but I do like it as when my own team, like you lose a back or you lose a couple of forwards and then you've got enough depth to cover it. I just think it's a no-brainer. I like it a lot. I think it adds a lot to the game. I think it makes for better games. We don't have any of those games like we have in the past few years where teams get disadvantaged from an injury and then you're just like, they can't win without someone. I can remember a game the other year when we lost our centre early on and we're playing Panthers and Tungo just like we were leading at the time, and then he just tore us apart in the second half because we had a back rower defending out there who just couldn't get near him. That shouldn't happen as much anymore, I reckon.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, mate. I mean, my feedback during the off-season was the concern around those young playmakers getting stuck on the bench week after week. But we've already seen some teams think around that. So Walsh from Manly has had some game time back in reserve grade and have come back. Guys like Sean O'Sullivan, who's obviously not a rookie, he's an experienced campaigner, but he's sat on the bench, hasn't been used, and then has played first reserve grade the next week. They're a similar sort of story. Walsh needs the experience, and Canterbury's reserve grade needs to play with someone at Sean O'Sullivan's level. So, if the clubs manage it like that and are rotating and thinking about the future, not only today, I haven't really got a knock on it so far. It hasn't really caused a massive difference. There was a little bit to your example earlier. There was a bit in the Para Dragons game where you lost a centre for a little while and there was a back row defending out there, and then with Hopgood going off, they actually brought a centre onto the field. So there's a little bit of jinking and driving.
They didn't actually. They brought on a back rower. So Charlie Lima came on and he defended 3 in and Moses defended at centre. I think we had Joash Papali on the bench who's quite little, and I think they thought maybe moving Simonson into centre and then Papali there trying to tackle one of your giant wingers probably wasn't the way to go. The theory is still there that it should work for teams that have to go through that. Has Cronulla's premiership window firmly shut? I don't think it was ever open. Like who honestly thought that they were going to win the comp the last 4 years?
That's brutal, Hawk. There's plenty of people out in the Shire that were hoping.
But I mean, okay, let's be honest, right? I haven't heard one person who's not affiliated with the Sharks suggest that they are a genuine chance of winning the comp the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, there's no doubt they've been a step behind Penrith to start with in their run. So yeah, look, you're probably right. I certainly think it's closed. I don't think they're gonna make a run for it this year. I would genuinely hope that Fitzgibbons change the way they build into a season. They've always been ones that have hovered around that 2, 3, 4 mark, and then come semis, they've just trailed off. So hopefully he's learned a bit around building into the season and being ready for semi-final football. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm not as harsh as you, but I'm with you, mate. They're going to beat up on some of the weaker sides. They're going to put up scores, but I can't see them winning. So for mine, I think the premiership window, if they did have one, is closed, and someone in the background at the Shire needs to start building for a new roster and a new era, mate, and try and cherry pick a few of those experienced players to stay with them. Yeah,
agreed. What about Fairy Tale bringing Bronson Cherry back? Would they ever do that?
Oh, well, that's a big one, mate. He certainly, I can't see him being at the Bulldogs, mate, so be interesting to see where he lands. I don't think you'll have a problem finding a new side, especially with the 2 new clubs coming in over the next few years, but another very strange one from the Bulldogs, so another one that I can't wait to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned SuperCoach before. Has there been any rising stars there that are of good value, or anyone else that's fallen off the cliff? What do you got for us?
Oh, mate, my blood pressure's been rising. I can tell you that much. I started week one with a bang, and it's gone pear-shaped from there. Look, there's been a couple. CFA Alongo had a monster couple of weeks where he's the leading point scorer at the moment. Tanner Boyd's been the big one to come out of the clouds. We obviously knew he was going to play and get game time, but he really hasn't been SuperCoach relevant until these last few weeks. So he was one that was nice. And then Jenkins is another one. We probably weren't even expecting him to be in the Penrith side, but he's gone berserk. Couple of ones, the rookies, both the back rows for the Storm, Lasardi, who's unfortunately now injured, and Chan started really well. But everything's starting to settle in a little bit now. So some of those big names that are traditionally the better players, in SuperCoach, the Grants, the Clearys, the Hasses, I can see them really. They're all around the top 10 already. Mm-hmm. But I can see them really going, taking the next level. And then one last one you mentioned, mate, Latrell. For his lack of work load, he just finds way to score points. So whether it's tries or tackle breaks, offloads, etc., he's been a really good one. Traditionally, a player goes from fullback into centre, they go backwards on the scoring. Latrell's this season's a bit different with the scoring, but Latrell's been really good. He's averaging 88, so he was a good little purchase for anyone who started the season with him.
Yeah, nice. How many of those top 10 can you realistically get in your squad?
Oh, look, at the moment, depending on how many you started, so I think I got 5 of the top 12 at the moment. Depending on how many you started with, you could realistically have probably 6 or 7 if you were Nostradamus at the start of the year. Not too many people started with the Tanner Boyds and the Thomas Jenkins, obviously. Even Jackson Ford's 4th. So those 3, their ownership's growing rapidly because of the performance and their growth in their money. But not too many people would have started with them. The others, there would have been a number of people that started with the others. Jaden Sewer and Fini Fuiaki are 2 that have done well as well. So the others you probably would have, but if you haven't probably got 5 to 6 of those top 12, you're going to start to make a little bit of a harder season for yourselves.
Yep. Okay, that's good. Now, for my knockout team this week, I've still got plenty of the top 8 up my sleeve. Do I just go soft and take one of them? It's going to win, or do I take a bit of a gamble and do I take the Dragons?
Mate, that's one hell of a gamble. You're a confident man.
Well, no, I'm not confident, but if you're going to win it, you've got to take a bit of a punt, right?
Yeah.
Or do I just?
Or have you started to see some?
Probably
of them,
more than half culled. So
right.
There's probably about 30 left. But at some point you got to mix it up, right? No, we're probably past halfway. There's probably still mid-20s left. So
right. Yeah, it's all about how big a risk, mate. I think the Bulldogs are a good thing. Obviously, the Storm and Penrith are good things. The Roosters, the Warriors. So there's probably a few games here that are a good thing. If you wanted to take a little bit of a flyer, the Raiders, Sharks, the betting market will probably be pretty close there. But I'd be disappointed if the Raiders didn't win that, mate.
Well, I've already taken the Raiders, so they're out. And I've taken 3 teams that aren't in that top 8 at the moment. So, I tell a lie. The Dolphins are up there. Maybe I just look for that. You might be right about the Dogs. That might be the safe option, but I'd love to have a bit of a punt. You're speaking as a jaded fan, but I'm more confident in the Dragons than what you are. I know it's 3 losses, but mate, they could just as easily be sitting at 2-1, 3-0. Like,
yep.
Yeah,
I'll be very disappointed and shocked if they don't beat the Titans. But unfortunately, I've been a supporter all my life, mate. I've seen seen plenty of losses that I've been disappointed in. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, to your point, they've probably been the better side over them and the Titans. They've played a couple of sides that will end up in the top 8, and they've been thereabouts. So we'll see what happens against the Gold Coast this weekend.
Yep. Now you had a question for me, I believe.
Yeah, I did, mate. It was. I'll just read it so I've got the right wording for you, mate. But it was an interesting one around Penrith. So, listener sent in, said it looks like teams that play the Penrith are mentally beaten before they take the field. How do you, as a coach, change that attitude? And just watching teams, I couldn't agree with that statement more. So what's your, how do you get around that? You're sitting in the dressing room and you look like the team, is defeated already.
So I think, like I talked about before, it's taken the outcome completely off it. I was even just thinking about what are the teams that have had success over them in recent times, and there haven't been many. We take the start of last year out as a bit of an aberration because they were finding their way, but the Broncos did knock them over, and that was playing something a bit different, like chance in their arm. But you're just not going to find your way if you're trying to do that consistently. And the only other team that's given them a run consistently is, like I said, Para. Maybe not in the last year or two, but from 2019 to 24, through all that dominance, we had a better than 50-50 split. And that was really down to playing the same football back at them. Like trying to just stay in the grind, and that is just having that ability to stick to your processes and have that ability to hang on to the ball. Because in those games where we did win, we just kept Moses kicked us out of trouble. We stayed in the contest. They were dominating field position, but just went set for set for set until something breaks. And that's what's happened. We've beat them in with a field goal and Golden Point, a couple of late tries in a couple of those games that come to mind. There was a couple where we just got beaten in close games. I think it's the media will say you're not going to beat them playing their own game, but I think that's what has shown is that actually that is the formula to beat them, and so it's got to be finding that consistency. Now, whether that holds up in the big games, I don't know, but you've got to go in there thinking, well, if we play our absolute best and they still beat us, well, you're just beaten by a better team. But I think you just got to go in there going, okay, we've got to stick to our process, not thinking about the scoreboard, and just keep hanging in there like the Broncos did in that prelim last year. To me, that's how I'd be approaching it. It's not focusing on from a mental perspective on can we beat them. It's like, what do we need to do? Like, how do we make sure we are hitting that level of consistency? To me, that's the only way.
Yeah, having that clear process in mind, that clear game plan, and being confident in it. I like it.
Yep. Now that is a challenge, and that's certainly not easy. Otherwise, more teams would have done it. But that's the challenge for teams at the moment. That's how they're going to. If anyone's going to be able to knock them off this year, that's how they're going to do it. To me, there's only one team that's looking like that. That's a possibility at the moment. And that's the Warriors. So, I know it's early days, but patterns already starting to emerge.
Yeah, it certainly is. And you talk about a Penrith disciple, a Cleary disciple over there at the Warriors, and they play a similar style of football. So. I'm not sure. We'll have to check for that for the next week's show when the two teams come up against each other. But it will be an absolute belter. So that's great insight, Hawk. Well done, mate.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, they're even sharing players now. They keep swapping players between teams. Yeah. It's almost like they're ganging up on us.
I agree. I agree.
Well, what we know for sure is that you and I are a few years away from being able to talk about our team in that light. So we hang on to hope. Although I did hear Flano talking about the Sharks' premiership year of 2016, how they did start 0-3 and then we went on to win 15 in a row. Yeah. A little bit of a different team. Can't see that happening this time, mate.
No, mate, no. There was a fair bit of talent in that Shark side. So, to your point, mate, we're a good few years away and a lot more recruitment, I think.
Yeah, exactly. All right, mate. that was a marathon today, but I think as the season goes, we're going to start to have more to talk about, and we might even have to start breaking these up into 2 episodes, one for a review and one for a preview. I was actually thinking halfway through, I'm like, we have to tap into our Rolodex of elite talent, maybe get them on to talk about some of those things, like we talked about the halfbacks, and might tap into some of my former guests on the pod. I'm sure you've got some good contacts who we could get on there as well, and to talk about some of those specifics. So yeah, that might be something for us to get in. Anyone listening who knows someone who would be a good guest, hit us up and keep those questions coming, because we are enjoying being challenged to answer those as well.
Spot on. Great ep, mate.
All right, mate. Catch you next week.
Cheers, all.
You've taken the time to listen to this whole episode. Now it's time to take action. Commit to one thing you've learned today and make it happen. And to avoid any obstructions, join the Sport is Life movement by clicking on the link in the show notes.